What's up, guys? For today's guest, we've got my good friend, actor and producer Jacques Derosena. He's worked on multiple films and TV shows, one of my favorites being HBO's show The Wire. He's also produced a ton of projects, with the most recent one being Son of South, alongside executive producer Spike Lee. He's a multilingual artist who speaks French and English, and there's a good chance you've heard his voice on any given cartoon or commercial. And if you can, please show support by clicking that subscribe button down below. It helps a lot. Let me know if you hear any feedback or anything. I know baby's running around, so you might hear a little bit of that. Is there a delay between us?
No, it's
okay,
no.
Cool. Okay, you made me think there was a delay. You're like,
no, it's pretty cool. It's pretty quiet in your background.
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah, for now. It's funny because I was talking to my friend Joy on the podcast a couple episodes back, and we had such a delay that every time I would say something, there, it's like that newscast delay when they're like, "I'm back to you, George," and George is just standing there, like waiting.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
Well, I'm glad we're up to speed. So what's new, dude? I don't know. We haven't chatted in a while, so I just wanted to touch base with you and see what's going on. I saw your was it Harvard commercial?
No, not commercial.
Harvard what was it?
Because I went to business school online.
Oh, okay. So you actually went for it.
Yeah.
Ah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
You can never tell if it's like an ad, like a commercial, or a job, or a personal life.
Right.
You never.
Yeah,
know.
right. In our world, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's a nice
Right.
car. Like, a nice car you're driving. What commercial are you shooting for? It's like, no, I just bought that car.
Right. It could go either way. That's what's funny about it. It could go either way. Either it's an ad or no, this is actually mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Vice versa. Oh, it's a nice car you bought. You're like, no, I'm just sitting in it for a commercial.
Right.
Well, that's dope, dude. Did you finish? So you signed up for it, or have you finished already?
I finished it.
Oh, good for you, man. Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah, it was good because it was on business, so it entrepreneur. It really helps how to evaluate a business, and from every aspect, and looking at all businesses, and how they scale, and you get a good worldview of how to really grow a business and to know when to pivot, so it's mind opening, it's like,
right.
It's crazy because like, I think everyone that's in business, they all follow that same formula, but it's just like, if you're from the outside, you only see the end result. You don't know how it's happening.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You don't know from start to finish how to start a business or run a business. Exactly. Yeah. What is the quote? Entrepreneurs work 100 hours for themselves so they don't have to work 40 hours for someone else.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, that hits home.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurship and building a business, you work double overtime, triple overtime. Like, you're constantly working. I know there's been times I've been in the shower and I've had to like do emails and reply to people in the shower, and you just don't have enough time to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
but I mean that's what if anything, like with any corporation or business or whatever, it's like somebody had to do it.
Right.
Like meaning like there's at some point somebody started it where it became a conglomerate for now for all these other people, even though all these other people are in all these other positions. But someone at the beginning was the one-man band of doing everything.
Right. Somebody had to start it.
Somebody had to start it.
Or a couple of people had to start it, but somebody had to have that spark. Yeah.
That spark, yeah.
Right. Which is interesting because the acting world is like entrepreneur in itself, because you are your own business. In the film industry, even director, whatever, writer, whatever you are your own business. So you've kind of already got the gist of that, but this is more running a company or starting a business from scratch, paperwork and all that stuff.
But it also helps you too, especially being an entrepreneur. Like just like you said, since we're in acting and entertainment, we're self entrepreneurs with that, because there's no one that's like giving you the roadmap. You're literally just creating this all on your own, but on your own. What works for you may not work for someone else, right? So it actually helps you in a sense of like, if you can get some more business acumen, because it can save you in a lot of errors, you know. And of course, if you avoid the headaches and the errors and the financial mistakes, you know, we're all for it, right? So yeah, it's interesting. And what's on top of that too, is like I follow a lot of Reed Hastings, who's the original CEO, owner, and founder of Netflix.
Okay, yeah.
So he was the one that originated Netflix, and then he hired Ted Sarandos, like I think like 6 or 7 years into Netflix, and like in 2000 he hired him, and that's when they took off from implementing, going from DVD to digital, right? And like his business model, and it's interesting, like it's different. Netflix, the way it's very different the way that Netflix, because he just came out with a book, and it's like it's starting to circulate literally, like I think just within a couple of days ago, and he did an interview, and it's interesting the way he's talking about how they run Netflix, and it's a bit controversial. In one sense, there are a lot of perks and rewards, because his first thing he says is that everyone has to prove themselves to stay in their position. So no one is immune of getting fired. If they're not up to par, they need to be let go. You know, so which, I mean, I get it, it's in the business, but in that sense, he wants the competition levels to be higher, and he wants the best people working for him.
Right.
So, but the thing is, it's a constant evaluation, he said. So it's not like, oh, okay, I proved myself this year, I'm good. No, next year you can be out. You know? So it's like you always have to be on your toes.
Always have to perform, yeah.
Always have to perform, yeah. But he does give good incentives for that, where it's like, he said, make sure you treat your employees not just like employees, that you actually give them the, you know, incentives of like, you're thinking for them before they even have to say anything. For instance, as far as like, one of the common things employees are like, okay, I want a raise, I feel like I deserve a raise. He implements giving employees raises before they even have to come to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like he's already thinking ahead of like how to really treat his team and his people before you have to voice your opinion on that. And really, like, taking care, he's a big advocate about taking care of yourself, whether it's like taking vacations and all that stuff too, and they would pay for that too. So it's interesting in that aspect. I mean, clearly not every company could do that, right? It's not like everyone's in that position, but it's an interesting dynamic culture of like, how does that work morale-wise for everyone that's in that circle, in that business, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. What's funny is that, what was it, Blockbuster? Blockbuster had the chance to buy Netflix before they pivoted to digital for, I think, $50 million, and they opted not to. And now what? Blockbuster's long gone, bankrupt, and Netflix is worth billions of dollars now.
Right.
That's the business world. In the Harvard Business School, did you learn? I'm sure you did. Economics and all that stuff of business.
Well, the economics, the scaling, and being able, the pivot aspect, which is challenging for a lot of people and businesses, which, you know, for instance, like what you said with Blockbuster, they didn't have the vision of seeing that they need to adapt and pivot to what's to come.
Right.
And the businesses that stay on that model, unfortunately, become dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know, where Reed and Ted, they had the foresight. I mean, Reed stated that he had the foresight of knowing that at the time, internet was slow. I mean, we're talking like, you know, it wasn't.
Yeah, you couldn't.
I mean,
stream.
actually, I think it was still dial-up at the time when they were. Yeah, it was dial-up. It wasn't
like
even
AOL.
to DSL. Yeah, it wasn't even because we're talking 2000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't, you know. So at the time, he was because he was trying to recruit Ted Sarantos, and he was mentioning how the internet is going to be so much faster, and a lot of things are going to be online, digital. And at the time, you know, this sounds like, you know, a Back to the Future kind of like Jetson situation. It's
Right.
like, really, because we're nowhere near that.
Or
at
they're
this
thinking
point.
20 years later.
20 years
but
later.
really, it was within the last or a couple of years after that everything just went full steam. Man, I remember when we started our business or businesses, it was such a headache to, like you said, learn. Like, there's no guide, there's no way to learn without kind of jumping in and just doing it. And so I just had to learn myself, basically, just researching as much as I could, just trying to get it going. You know, even applying for the LLC and doing all the paperwork, that's such a headache just to even do that. And like you said, that's the back end. The people don't even see that part of it. They just see a business that you've created.
Yeah.
They don't see all the time and effort that went into filling out paperwork and getting your domain registered and LLC and your address and looking for a location and just everything that goes into it, signing a lease and doing a build out if you have new construction. And it's crazy the amount of work that goes into just opening a door to a business
like
that might
you're
fail.
creating a sim world from
Basically.
scratch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like
Yep.
it's like you said, it's all on you. So it's a lot of information and research on your part. Where,
Yeah.
you know, it's rewarding at the same time, where once you're in it and you're able to do certain things as far as like starting the business and you're into the business.
Yeah.
And now you have, I don't know if I'm pretty sure you have like some level of satisfaction of seeing like where you started of like, how am I going to do this, to now, like, it's not even like a point of assessment. Like, you're already into it and you're just like to the next level. Yeah.
We're way past that point. Yeah, because they say that businesses have on average 2 years before they actually start. So when you start the business, open your doors, 2 years if you're going to make it or break it is what they usually give. Sometimes 3 years even. So you could not be profitable for the first 2, maybe 3 years. If you make it past that point, then you start to look back and realize, okay, this boat is sailing. Like, it's not sinking. So that's a good thing. A lot of businesses start out within the first year or two close, because that's the hardest time. It's just starting out. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is like you said, people don't see the back end, but I know we took at least a year of prepping. So I'm talking about doing the paperwork, designing the website, getting everything ready before we even started building the business. So it was a whole year of preparation, to interior design, to products, to everything that was going into the business was all thought out ahead of time. Even measuring furniture, to where it was going to be placed on the floor, to how far away from it was going to be from this table to that table to this door. Like, everything was thought out a year in advance. So that way when we opened the business and started the business, it was like, boom, here's our business plan, here's this, here's that, here's the blueprints, here's the layout. And like, it was more of a guide, more of a blueprint to go off of. But yeah, we're looking back now 5 years later, so we've managed to make it through. So that's a good mark to be past, 5 years.
Absolutely. You passed the, like you said, the point of no return.
Yeah.
Right.
And then COVID hits and everybody is forced to close.
Right. Yeah. about that thing.
Yeah,
that just hit us.
that's just crazy. The crazy thing too is it depends on what type of business you're opening, but I'm speaking in terms of just like a brick and mortar.
Yeah.
Opening a location. Yeah, but a lot of businesses nowadays are either a product, so they have an actual product to sell, which most of the times they just have it online that they're selling it. Maybe they're building it out of their garage or their house, or they'll rent like a small warehouse space, but they don't have a storefront like a brick and mortar, or a restaurant or anything like that, like a retail shop. And then the other kind of things are an online business, like a Netflix, like those type of businesses where it's all done online. There's no storefront.
Well, what's interesting? I'm seeing pivoting wise as far as like businesses, especially COVID, kind of opened that up a little bit to some people that are able to see, okay, this is where we can transition with this.
Yeah.
As far as whatever we're granted, the brick and mortar situation, I mean, it's affected because of this, and people, based on the guidelines, if people can actually go, if it's open or not, that's one thing. The online stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, depending on what state we're in, because I guess like not every state is the same, right? So,
yeah.
Or and I should break down not every county. There are some counties
That's true too.
that have different rules and regulations. One thing I'm noticing now where businesses are getting hip to it, where Netflix opened it up as far as the subscription-based model.
Right.
It seems more, like, I mean, both the consumer and the actual business, they both benefit from it. I mean, you have, you grow in your number of subscribers, so you have a monthly retainer from people that are subscribing. Granted, they can unsubscribe at any moment, but depending on your model, I mean, because Netflix has it, Amazon always had it with their what is it, like I think
Amazon
it was $100 a year, Amazon Prime, right?
And
which gave a lot of
incentive.
Yeah, right. Like free shipping.
Yeah. And Adobe did that as well. With their software. So they were the first ones to kind of do that with their software, where instead of purchasing the software and you own that software, now it's a subscription model, but you get all their software. You don't just get Photoshop or Lightroom or After Effects or Premiere. Now you can subscribe to the whole house of apps that they make. But it's constantly revolving, so you constantly have to subscribe every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in one sense, it's for a consumer. I mean, it depends on what, do you find yourself like shopping or going to this stuff frequently, where it's more beneficial for you to subscribe than to do a la carte, where now you're really able to take advantage of all the incentives that are being offered to you in the subscription, model, right? So like the other people that obviously that jumped in, Disney jumped into the same subscription model as well, their platform, and Walmart recently.
The Walmart stock, I was actually interested in looking into that because they are pivoting, not necessarily to compete with Amazon, but it is competing with Amazon because they're doing same day shipping, pickup, and the thing is they have a little upper hand on Amazon because Amazon only has warehouses. You can't go to any Amazon and like purchase something except for the grocery stores that they bought for groceries. But Walmart does. Walmart has the warehouses and the storefronts. So you can order and go to the store and pick it up.
Absolutely.
So if you live in a place where your packages are getting stolen constantly, or it's hard for them to deliver to you, or whatever the case may be, you can just ship to store and go pick up in store. Amazon doesn't have that feature.
That's it.
And Amazon doesn't have groceries yet either.
Well, it's interesting you say that too, because a couple years, it hasn't been that long. It's only been a couple years ago where, remember Kinko's was a standalone by itself.
Yeah.
They merged with FedEx. But it's like, it changed the game now, like just with what you're saying, because it's like, Now you can schedule to pick it up at a 24-hour place. Yeah. So I think it's about what's happening now is showing the convenience aspect of like, with what you're saying is like, how convenient is it because everyone's situation is different as far as their work life, family life balance. So when they have something that they're trying to fit in, whether it's to get a product that they ordered, or they're trying to fit in to watch a specific program or whatever, it's like, it can't be done all at the same time. Which kind of brings you back to Netflix a little bit, because one of their base model, how they separate themselves from regular public broadcasts, or cable as well, because those are all done on Nielsen ratings, right? They're all based on the numbers, and they're done on a bubble where it's like, if the first episode doesn't give good numbers, they're on a chopping block. If it's on regular, channels, primetime, or broadcast, or cable. Whereas if it's on Netflix, because this is a library that you can literally watch at any moment at any time. So it's not like, it doesn't have to compete at a specific time slot. Whereas like now, if it's let's say it premieres at it's the premiere dates on a regular TV show for a regular broadcast, they have to do a lot of advertising. They're wishing that a lot of people will watch it when it comes out. Otherwise, that show's in trouble. Whereas for Netflix, whenever it advertises a new film or a new show is out, now it's up to you to binge watch it whenever you want.
Right. And they don't have a set time frame because of any
They don't
ratings.
have a set time frame. Yeah.
And they actually release that. They keep that information private to themselves, and they release it whenever they want to.
Yeah.
So they could be like, oh, this movie streamed this many this month,
Right. And it's interesting, their model with that too, because like you said, they keep the data to themselves.
Yeah.
And they, with that experience and data, now they can actually see like, okay, which actors, directors are performing very well, and how can we get more products from them? So now they can actually go to the table with them and try to, just like when they started with House of Cards, and they've been doing a lot more things recently where now they're able to, because the most recent biggest, before they started giving out these what we would call max contracts and Netflix, they gave the first person I think was Adam Sandler. They started with Adam Sandler when they signed him on to do all these movies where everyone's like, he said he does theatrical movies. Like now you're moving into Netflix, but they already had the data to show that, hey, our core audience all over the world loves Adam Sandler. So
they already knew to give him a contract.
They already knew to give him a contract. Yeah.
They didn't have to test the market after the fact.
Right,
which is smart for them. And another smart thing that they did, which, we'll see, time will tell, is they dumped a lot of money into their own production because they were leasing or contracting films from other studios like Disney, which is why half that stuff got pulled from Netflix. Netflix for a while didn't have any decent stuff to offer because all the other studios were doing their own streaming services like Disney. So it's smart for Netflix to realize that ahead of time and start pumping money into their own productions that they own the rights to. Granted, it put them millions and billions of dollars into debt, but they also make billions of dollars, so I'm sure they'll come out of that.
Yeah, it's interesting there with that because they're able to take a lot more risks in the types of stories that they're able to tell because they're not being cornered into a specific time slot or a mandate of they've scaled because they still had issues reaching out to different countries, especially in France, because France law was that if any film that goes to a film festival, and it would have to be played there. And one of the things that was happening in Cannes Festival is that originally, like, Netflix would show up at the film festival, and they would acquire it. They would want to release it on their online platform. And there's a model that's changed, because originally there was a day and date release between theatrical and online release. Typically it was between 3 to 6 months. And we're talking in the US, we're not even talking internationally. Internationally, it'd probably take a year or more. So by the time it comes out to another country, a year and a half later, that was the model. But Netflix was like, well, we don't want our customers to have to wait for an entire year, so we're just going to put that. And which was a big disruptor in a lot of European areas, where they're like, well, that's not fair to us, because they're all about the cinema aspect. They're, especially with the production aspect, because in America, like, as we are independent filmmakers, unless you're working for a studio model that's giving you, backing and a budget and all that stuff, it's different. Whereas a lot of countries in Europe, we're going, from the BBC to a lot of other, and Spain, they're actually backed by the government to produce projects. So they work differently. They're backed by that. Whereas us, it's we have to find a way to make it, however you make it.
Yeah. I wonder how that works. How does that work in other countries if they're backed by the government? Does the government have a say in a lot of it, like a studio head would? Like, are they regulated? How does that work? Are there grants?
Yeah, it's a combination of all that: grants, tax incentives, and depending on how involved they're going to get in the project, where if they want to get fully involved, where they're fully financed it, but for the most part, they do get involved with grants and tax incentives, and really try to shepherd it, because they're really about the thing about a lot of those other countries, that they don't have the window of having as much outlets as America. I mean, just like with what you just mentioned, Disney and Amazon and Hulu. I mean, all of these are in America. We're not even talking the cable outlets, HBO and Showtime. These are all, outlets that your projects can be seen if they get accepted. And as opposed to the other parts of the world where they actually have to work with the local governments to meet their guidelines. And the other thing too is a lot of the other countries, they kind of look at it as a way, it's like, okay, I know you produced this project in your country, but we don't want you to just come in our country, right? And just like make money off of it and then pack your bags and leave. Like, what is an incentive for us?
Yeah. And so that's how that's probably how they look at Netflix. When Netflix comes in and buys a film and then says, hey, we're going to release it all over the world on our platform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Netflix has had to make adjustments because of that. Recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say.
That's probably why then, if you have a VPN, which is a virtual private network, so you can change your IP address on your computer to a different country. So like you can change your IP address and say you're from France. So therefore, when you log into Netflix, it's gonna think your computer's in France, and you'll get a whole different streaming selection based off of that, based off your country origin.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Okay, that makes sense.
So because of that situation, of course, it's interesting because they're all in a sense of competition. I mean, it's just like sports. I mean, they all, from all the heads, from Ted to like, all the other heads of all the programming for all the other cable networks and primetime. When you had Les Moonves, you name it, all of them. You know, they, at the end of the day, they all want their network to be number one. Where, you know, we're getting the most watch shows, we're getting the most Emmy nominations, you know, and wins. And so Netflix had to, because of the European country situation, so they actually opened up by producing original content in those countries, to work with those countries to produce it, so that they can show that, hey, we're not just setting up shop just to get your subscribers in your country. We are actually gonna invest in your country, and by
promote
producing,
your country and your culture.
Promote your country and your culture and do original programming over there.
Which is why I think even on our Netflix in America, there's a lot of Bollywood films, because they produce so much Bollywood films, and some of them are really good, like production-wise. And so there's a lot of those, and then you'll see a lot of Asian cinema on there now too. So you'll see a lot of different cultures on there now, even in the American Netflix. Yeah.
They're expanding. I mean, it's costly once again, but right? I mean, because all this stuff costs. Yeah. But as they keep getting more subscribers, it's interesting at that aspect, because you had mentioned earlier about content-wise, because it's almost a gift and a curse with that, because it's based on content, and you have to have enough content for people to stay on there. Yeah.
So who has the most content?
Who has the most content to, you know, for people to want to stay on this platform.
Yep, that's why I was so excited about Disney releasing or launching Disney Plus, and then finding out that they purchased Fox, and also the shares of Hulu. So they own the majority of Hulu. So Disney owns Fox and Hulu, and you know, it's gonna be a massive streaming service when all is said and done. What do you think is gonna happen with movie theaters?
Well, it's already the ones that were able to have done. They started transitioning to drive-ins for the moment. To do the drive-in theaters experience, which, in a sense, it takes you back to where we weren't born, but of course we watch all those clips of when, you know, the previous generation before us used to go to movie theaters in their cars, right, and watch it on a big old screen. So it's interesting. I mean, we've heard that term of like things that seem to be in our circle, the past. I didn't think we actually meant for this to happen.
We always revisit the past.
We always revisit the past, right?
People are wearing 80s and 90s clothes, and we're going to drive-in movie theaters like it's the 50s.
Right. I mean, we're short of some of you know, men and women showing up in roller skates and coming by our cars with the food, right?
Yeah, basically. That's a very small number of theaters though that can have the outdoor space to do that though. I know a lot of movie theaters that are, you know, indoors in malls and in shopping complexes. I don't know what's going to happen with those. I know AMC just finally started opening some of their movie theaters back up, and that's one of the biggest movie theaters in the country, biggest chain. And they're doing like $5 Tuesdays or something like that, like $5 movie tickets. So yeah, they're trying to get people back in the movie theaters, but
it's tough. It's tough, especially. So you mentioned the big name chain like AMC. You know, you have the Cinemarks, where now it's changed the dynamic of like for independent cinema, because the way that a lot of these theaters used to work was that they would get a lot of the major blockbuster films in their theaters, because based on their distribution, they get a certain percentage with the distribution companies, right?
Yeah.
So they would fill up, you know, depending on the theaters. Let's say the theaters had anywhere between 8 screens, or some of them had, you know, less than that, 4 or 5. So the bigger ones could afford to fill up 6 screens with blockbusters and have 2 screens with independent cinema, because then they're like, they know there's people are going to come by the droves to come watch these big blockbuster films. And they're probably in the nicer theaters where, very nice seats, all the accommodations and all that stuff. So they're willing to pay that extra $16, $25 and, whatever the price it is, and it keeps going up, right? Whereas they would have the last two screens, they can have independent cinema where they know it's not going to be as big of a turnout because this isn't a big feature film. This is a studio film, but it might have quality, and it gives the opportunity for independent filmmakers to showcase their project. Where now it's tough because that window it's very narrow at this moment, because now the theaters actually need the blockbusters to get people in, because now, just like you said, if they're doing $2 Tuesdays or something,
$5 Tuesdays, but it should be $2 Tuesdays.
It should be $2 Tuesdays, right? Yeah.
A prime example is Milan, Disney's Milan. So they were set to release that in theaters, and I want to say it was France. A lot of the theaters in France or one of the countries was already marketing and doing promotions for Milan to be in theaters. And that was supposed to bring a lot of people into the theaters, which it would have. And then Disney pivoted at the last minute and said, you know what, we're just going to release it on our streaming service, Disney Plus. And so that hindered movie theaters even more. So not only if they show blockbusters, they have more room to show independent films, but it's up to the studios if the studios are even going to show the blockbusters in the theaters. So their movie theaters are hindered hugely. They kind of just have to pivot, like we were saying earlier, and figure out more independent films that they can show in theaters and try to get some sort of revenue in there.
Yeah. Well, I can see on the aspect of for Disney's Mulan how the issue that they have, especially during this pandemic, is that like any big blockbuster film like that, they're spending print and advertising, right? And the bigger the film, a film like that, they're probably spending anywhere between $15 to $20 million in print and advertising, with all the trailers on TV and stuff. And you get to a certain point where, like, well, how many people do we actually think can go to these theaters? Because when to just have France be the only place that many people can go to the theaters. They don't invest that much money to have only one area in the entire world to do it. Right?
Yeah, I guess, so they weren't necessarily trying to keep the profits for themselves, but their numbers would be completely skewed, especially here in the States, in America, because certain states you can't even go to a movie theater. They're not open.
Exactly.
So if they do release it in theaters, A, only a certain number of theaters are open, a certain percentage. B, a lot of people are still scared of the COVID, stuff going on, and they don't even want to go out to the theaters that are open. So their numbers would be vastly skewed, which could make them and the film look bad. Oh, it only grossed this amount,
Right.
And then I also think second backflip of that coin is they're trying to test the market to see if they can release things just digitally.
Yeah. Well, it also helps them in a sense of like, because remember, the other earlier big release they had was Hamilton. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. And that really, the fact that they were able, so they had Hamilton and they were able, because I think they wanted again to do that theatrically, but then had to quickly pivot and just release it on their platform. So it benefits them because a lot of people know about this project. It's a big name, whether it's Hamilton or Mulan. But then when you put that, hey, it's on our platform, come subscribe. Right. So now you're like, okay, at least we'll get, even if we get a couple people that are curious about subscribing, that still helps us, because once the thing about, it's just like with any business, right? You want to get people in, because the hardest part is trying to get people to initially try whatever service that you're giving them.
Right.
Once you get them in, then you're like, well, at this point now I can feed them more because now they're in the palm of my hand. So now it's like, now I can show them,
Right.
this is why you made a good decision.
It's the customer acquisition.
Yes.
It's more about acquiring the customer first than the retention of keeping the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So at this point, when they put at the end of their trailers and their print advertising, like, hey, only on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Right. So now everyone else, well, I gotta subscribe to it because I actually want to see this.
Mm-hmm.
So that can, even if people decided to subscribe for 1 month, it still helped their numbers, their financials and all that stuff go up really well. I mean, they released that. They even released Beyonce's Black is King, and that did very well for them. So they've been really,
Trolls 2 or something like that.
Trolls 2,
yeah.
So they've been releasing some big contenders as far as films to really get people to, so you may have some people that jump in immediately, and some people are like, well, I don't know. And then when they see a second big project come up, and now their curiosity is like, you know what?
Yeah.
They actually have 2 things that I'm curious about.
I was on the fence before.
Right.
But you talked me into it, Disney.
You talked me into it this time, right. Right.
And it'll be interesting to see what their numbers are, because I know they got, I think, 50 million subscribers in the first quarter, or whatever it was, first year that they launched Disney Plus. They already got 50 million subscribers and counting.
I mean, the difference between them as well as a lot of other streaming services too is, I mean, they have history way beyond from everyone else. I mean, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
When you have that kind of history that's dating back such a long time, and you have multiple amusement parks already across the world, where it's like it's they have, at this point, it almost feels like whatever new thing that they come up with, they're gonna have people that's gonna be jumping onto it.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the hardest parts about their stock too, is that a lot of the revenue comes from theme parks, and for the last 5-6 months they've been forced to be closed, so they're not generating that revenue from their theme park. So they're showing like $2 billion loss or something like that for the quarter. So yeah, that's the rough part. But with the streaming and all that stuff kind of coming up, that should help alleviate some of that pain.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting point you brought with that. I mean, like you said, it is their extreme main point of bread and butter via all these amusement parks. But once again, the difference between them and what Blockbuster didn't do is their pivotness, right? Yeah, they went digital. We were talking, it all comes back full circle. They went digital, and they're able to pivot with that. So that's what really helps.
Yeah. Since you went to Harvard Business School and finished that, I know you're part of Triangle Road Entertainment, or you own Triangle Road Entertainment. What business would you open, or what business would you do moving forward?
Outside of entertainment? Or just
it could be a flower shop, anything. Anything you're thinking of. What business would you open? Or is it something proprietary that you don't want to speak of?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we just had a big talk about this new, with this whole other group of this new business proposition last night. And it's what I learned in Harvard Business School Online was interesting as far as the right questions to ask to evaluate this. And because we're given real life examples of seeing how businesses can really scale and what you can take advantage of. I mean, being an independent business, you want to use as much resources that you have available to you. That, initially, if you have free, or anything that's, less, that's less costly, you want to try to do that. So and one of the things that I brought up, which I saw with a lot of companies, it's 2 situations. I mean, it is a very big commitment. It's hard to just go into a business and be like, hey, okay, I'm just gonna do this thing. Where it's like, no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? It's like there's no, you know, 1 foot in and 1 foot out. Like if you want this thing to work,
there's no easy button or any quick way of doing it. It's sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice.
It's sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice. So the thing about that is, what is your strategy? Is there an exit strategy behind the business that you're trying to do? You know, where it's like, because one of the things we were taught, because we actually looked at all these different entrepreneurs, very successful entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, to Steve Jobs, to Mark Zuckerberg, and Mark Cuban. And one of the things we saw that they all had in common was a lot of, and we actually do it too. I'm nowhere in that kind of scale, but have you noticed that you're always, it's not like you're stuck in just one business. Like, yes, you have, you know, you may have one business that's very, very successful, but you're also thinking about working on other business ventures. Like, and that's what all these entrepreneurs all have in common. Where it's like, we know for Elon Musk, I mean, the guy started off with all these electric vehicle cars where, you know, he's got a space program on top of that. You know, so it's like SpaceX. So it's like, you know, to people who are kind of looking at it like, you know, isn't one business enough for you? Like, you also want to, you know, so it's like, you know, Mark Cuban is the same situation. Mark Cuban is a tech guru. You know, his first business was tech. How did he end up owning the Dallas Mavericks? Right. You know, so it's like, you know, there's still, you know, and as you see him on Shark Tank, he has invested in so many other businesses.
He owns owns portions of multiple businesses. Yeah. His portfolio is huge.
Yeah.
It's because it's always wanting to create something.
Absolutely.
That's part of the entrepreneurs are kind of like artists.
Yeah.
You know, they're like a painter or an actor or a writer or a musician. Whatever art form it is, to me, entrepreneur is almost like an artist because they constantly want to create something. They're always looking for something new or innovative to create or an answer to a problem. They're going to find the solution. They're problem solvers. So
now you just said the key sentence right now that is a gem that was taught to us right there when you just right now. It's an answer to a problem.
Yeah. If there's a problem, you can solve it, and that's
you can solve it. That is the mantra of every business.
That's what we did with our second business. Was we owned our first business, and we had a problem not with the first business, but I don't want to say too much, but basically we were having an issue getting certain things for our business, and I was like, if I'm having this problem, other businesses like me are having this problem. There's got to be a solution for it. So therefore, the second business was an answer to that problem. And so now our second business feeds all other businesses that are having that problem. So our second business is the solution to a problem, in so many words.
But it's interesting how that happened, because that tends to happen with a lot of these entrepreneurs, where it's like on the original business that you're in, somehow you end up noticing a problem that not only you're having, that you have the light bulb, like you said, of other businesses, but they having the same issue too. I mean, it wasn't your original thought process, but in the process of doing it, you discovered something new.
Right. Yep. You know, another thing that a lot of those entrepreneurs have in common, I was reading an article the other day that popped up. Like you said, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, all those entrepreneurs, they have a lack of sleep. And I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. That's why I have insomnia. Like I sleep 4 or 5 hours a day. And then the article says that, a lot of the entrepreneurs do that because your brain is constantly going and thinking of new things. You're trying to think of problems or answers or just solutions, just constantly going, so you can't sleep. And also you work a ton. You work like 100 hours. So
I equate that to you are constantly playing chess in your head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, yeah.
This game is, you have never ended this game.
It's never over. It's a just
It's never
infinite game
over.
of chess.
Infinite game of chess.
The pawns just keep moving around the board.
Absolutely.
So, what business would you open then? What would you what are your plans? What are you thinking of doing without giving
Well,
away too much information?
so I mean, it's once again kind of like we just said, like it's based on answering solving a problem
Yeah.
that can help with the convenience of people, because now it's more than ever, as we can see, it's about convenience. How can you make people, the life of anyone easier with, whatever it is, whether it's, content, or whether it's an actual product or service, every business that you see, it's taking on something that was established, but they made improvements upon it, because times are changing and you have to adapt to different lives at this point, because not everybody is working the 9 to 5. Not everybody has the same set schedule. So you have to make things a little bit more convenient to people that are, in different spaces.
More convenient for people, but also more accessible to more people.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has the same access as everybody. So
absolutely,
that's a key thing too. And it's interesting you said Walmart before, because you said that people's schedules are changing, especially with school back in swing now. A lot of schools aren't fully open, so there's kids still at home doing online schooling, basically homeschooling, because there has to be a parent there. So now their schedule's changed, and so they can't go to their 9 to 5 like normal. They can't go to the grocery store like they wanted to. Their kids at home the whole time. So now they're finding new ways to get product and groceries. So it's smart that Walmart's pivoting to that delivery system.
Yeah, and just with basically what you're saying, I mean, if I'm a parent that is looking at it where I'm stuck at home, I got my kid here, and is it worth me to take off the time to actually go outside and try to run all these errands, where there's a service for just a little bit extra that I can pay off for a year in advance, where now I have access to the service that can come to me and make my life a little bit more easier. It's a convenient aspect. I mean, granted, not everybody is in that position, because at the same time too, on the flip side, when you look at it too, you can also look at it as this is another bill that you're adding to everything else that I have.
Yeah.
Right?
Another subscription.
Another subscription. Right.
Yeah.
So that's the other side of it too, where it's like, it's you also have to be responsible in that aspect of seeing what really works for you.
Right.
Because it can get out of hand. I mean, it has become an a la carte situation where it's like, if I subscribe to Netflix, I subscribe to Disney, I subscribe to HBO, I subscribe to Amazon, I subscribe to Walmart. It's like,
Yep, and you're a cord cutter because you cut your cable bill, which was $170 or some crazy amount. But now every subscription added up, you're paying $200.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's double-edged sword.
Double-edged sword. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you Well, I know LA. I don't want to talk about COVID, but I know LA's like on lockdown still. I know like production. Have production started back up over there, or how's it going over there with production?
Well, filming wise, it's been for like theatrical filming, it's a little bit more tougher, because the union has really put in place that all these guidelines and measures have to be put. I mean, clearly with all the changes that are happening with, like, as far as the 6 feet distancing, the the amount of people that come on set.
Right.
It's the constant test. Just for instance, just this week, I'm saying it's last week, it's Monday. The last week, I should say, I had to work on 2 shoots, and I had to take the test twice.
Oh wow.
Because they're 2 different shoots. So so just on that aspect, it's interesting because at the same time, like it's you want everyone to be protected, because this is such an intimate type of field that we're in, right? It's a lot of collaboration and stuff, but it's expensive. I mean, these tests are not cheap. So unless you have a budget, you're a studio, or you have a really good backing, like that's why, and as independent filmmakers, how are you going to be able to shoot anything? I mean, because the insurance alone to cover this, it's not that many insurance companies are going to want to cover COVID
for an independent film crew.
For an independent film,
and then the insurance, and also the testing of the COVID test, the price of that, and then also the regulation of how many people could be on set. For most big budgets, big productions, you need a ton of people on set. People don't realize that there's usually about 15, 20 people behind camera at any given point in a scene. You can see 2 people on screen, but there's 20 to 30 people behind them on the camera. And so if you're limited to 10 people, I mean, you have to have a skeleton crew and you can't do the film or do the TV series, whatever. You can't film whatever you're trying to film in the quality or way that you want to when you're limited to 10 people.
Absolutely.
You can't have a gaffer and a sound guy and a DP and director.
Well, this is what's interesting now, as far as anyone that is that close to the talent, from director to the DP to sound, they are all required to put on a different shield mask.
Ooh.
This isn't the regular mask. We're talking a full-on face shield.
Yeah, the riot shield
required.
thing.
Required.
Oh wow.
Yes. And it gets tough because clearly, while you're in the moment during a day, people can forget, because you're moving things, constantly and stuff. But the minute you get anywhere close, it is required for you to put that on. Whether you are the director, your DP, sound, makeup, everyone,
any department
that's that close to talent, it is required to put on a face shield.
That's got to hinder your job. You've got this big shield, and there's a glare, like there's lights everywhere. It can get hot on set, and a director, if you're trying to look into the eyepiece of your camera, like you can't do that. Like that's just
yeah. You just named every single thing
scenario,
scenario, and that's you're naming all those on behind the camera. Imagine the actors and the actresses now, especially with their intimate scenes, right?
Yeah,
so now so it's a bit of controversy. But what is being currently done right now is, once they get to a certain point before they get to the 6 foot, within the 6 foot distancing, and if there has to be any intimate kissing or love making or whatever, it's being done with dummies.
With dummies?
Yes, actual dummies. We're talking full on make out with a dummy.
Okay, so for setup?
No, for shooting.
What?
Yes.
How does that even work? Wait, okay, so like an OTS, like if you have an OTS shot over the shoulder, and they're like making out you, so you can't really see the back of this person. That's just a dummy. It's not even a double or the original actor.
Absolutely. So one of the whichever actor they're doing the POV of they're making out with a dummy.
So that's for intimate scenes. But I wonder how they're gonna do, or how they are doing, dialogue scenes. So say there's two people sitting at a little coffee shop in a small table, and they're sitting across from each other, and they're clearly not 6 feet apart. I wonder how you can't have a dummy sitting there. It's two profile shots. It's a wide shot.
Right.
So I'm wondering if they do a split screen. I wonder if they lock the camera down and then record one actor on this side, do their scene, do their dialogue without anybody sitting there, and then shoot the other actor on their dialogue without anybody sitting over here, and then splice the two together.
Well, what they've done in those instances is, so they know, they pre-prepped for this shoot in advance of knowing, these are the type of scenes that we're going to have to shoot for these actors and stuff. So what they would do in that instance is that they would quarantine the actors for like
5 days.
Well, more than that. They've they're doing them for a minimum of 2 weeks.
2 weeks now? Ooh, 14 days.
So I've spoken to several agents actually last week that were talking about a couple agents and producers that have their shows that are trying to figure out how they're doing it and how some of them are actually starting back. So a big major point that they've come up with is the quarantine aspect, that before they start shooting, the entire cast has to quarantine for a minimum of 2 weeks before they actually start shooting. So then, by that time they would know, they're okay. But one of the issues that the agents were telling us was that to tell actors for 2 weeks to that they have to be in one place, and what's tricky is that they're not really supervised because they're given the onus of like, okay, they're putting them in a specific location, but for 2 weeks they don't really have access to do anything. Like, they're supposed to be there to shoot 2 weeks after, but for 2 weeks, one of the issues that they were saying was that it's tough to tell an actor to stay put for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of management and babysitting in that aspect. Because
for 2 weeks for nothing. For 2 weeks
for
just
2 weeks
to film
for nothing.
For another month or so.
Yeah. So that's one of the big issues that they're having, as far as they constantly have to periodically check that. I mean, because you can imagine. I mean, I don't want to generalize and say all actors or entertainers, but to kind of go into the aspect of what you were mentioning, that entrepreneurs are artists in a sense. We constantly like to move. It's hard for us to stay put in one place for too long, right? So imagine being told that you have to stay in one specific area for 2 weeks. That's what makes it more difficult, because now you already had contingency in place, because we obviously know a lot of things can go wrong and you want to prep for that. But now you have all these extra fringes that you have to add to the budget.
Part of this budget's going to go to 2 weeks of nothingness.
Right. Try to justify that to your investors.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. On top of the cost of the COVID tests, that's just it's going to hinder a lot, man. It's funny that we started out the conversation with, I thought you were doing a commercial for the Harvard Business School. And you know why? Because your posts, you were saying whatever you were saying stuff in French, and that's why I didn't know what you were saying.
Oh.
So to me, it looked like a commercial, like a French commercial or something. Like, because you do a lot of voiceover work in French, so I thought it was literally an ad. I thought it was a commercial. Damn. What were you saying in the, do you remember what you were saying in the post?
Yeah, so I mentioned...
So wait, say it in French first.
So I said, tu connais Superman, voici Harvard Man. Which means, so everyone knows Superman, here's Harvard Man.
Oh, okay, because you had the Harvard shirt on.
The Harvard, yeah,
Right. Okay, so it makes sense now.
yeah.
I should have had subtitles on the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. And the other here's the other thing too that's interesting that's happening. Not only from the production aspect, like even so, because we also have the film festival. We've had our film festival now for 4 years. This year would have been the 5th year that we do in North Hollywood at the NoHo Arts District at the Lamley Theaters. And the Lamley Theaters they're known theaters, but they're also very independent theaters, and they're in that scenario that we were talking about as far as they're not a big conglomerate like Cinemark or AMC, right? So they have to have a certain number of blockbuster films to go in there, but they're one of the very few that actually are big proponents of film festivals and independent cinema. So you would see, if you would go to their website or their lobby theaters, you would see all the big films that you all know about that are anticipating, but then you would also see some other films that independent films of quality and that you might not have heard of or been interested in. And so they're champions for that, but that's been tough for them as well, because now theaters, like we were saying, are not open or they're at very limited capacity. So now that even shortens it for them and for us, because for the last 3 years, because the first year we were in Corona, the last 3 years we've been at the Lamley Theaters doing film festival there 7 days in a row. And now this year we're unable to do that. So we've had to pivot, and we've pushed the film festival for late January of 2021. Now, right now as it stands, we're pushing for it to be a hybrid of if things do change to go to whatever normal it can go back to, of people being able to go to theaters. But we also were able to find a streaming service that we partnered up with, that they actually have the process in place to do a virtual film festival.
Okay.
So we've went through the test aspect with that, with a virtual aspect of doing a film festival to see how it would look like.
Right.
Which it's completely different. I mean, great, right? It's a whole new world. It's completely different, but it's, you have to adapt. I mean, we can't just be a dinosaur and when literally things are, there's no other option. You have to adapt to it. Things are virtual until they can get back to being
all forced to.
Yeah, we're all forced to it. So, and we're obviously not the only ones that are doing it. Like basically almost, it's just now that some of the film festivals in the other parts of the world are starting to have in-person screenings and stuff with it, still with the 6-foot distancing stuff, but all the major festivals, I mean, between Cannes, Tribeca,
Toronto,
Sundance. Like Sundance, all of these were all virtual. Like Toronto, I think Toronto just ended, and Venice just started. Venice. So yeah, it's all been in a virtual, and we know it's engaging. It's just like how are people interacting. Like I actually participated in one of the virtual film festivals, and it was interesting in the aspect of like the pros and the cons behind it. The pros are that it's a centralized, meaning like the centralized locations that wherever you're watching it from on your laptop, right? So now you're not running around all over the place where you're like, okay, I have a meeting over here, so I got to run to this side of town, or this side of whatever pavilion, and whatever you set your schedule to, you can do it all in one place because you're doing it online. and it opens you up to the global aspect of, because now you have people from all over the world that are also participating. It's not just local people where like wherever you used to do this film festival, whether it's in a state, like we're talking about for like Tribeca in New York, or here, a lot of film festivals in Los Angeles. Now you're online where you can actually meet filmmakers from different parts of the world.
How interactive is it though? Because I know you go to Cannes Film Festival every year. Did you do the online thing that they did this year?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you take away from that, the pros and the cons? Because when I look at it like you're going to Cannes, you're going to France. Like you get to experience a whole nother country, a whole nother culture. You get to dress up and go to this, red carpet event and film festival, one of the biggest in the world. And you get to meet different people in person and feel that energy. And there's something to be said about that energy. Whereas online, yeah, you're meeting more people from around the world because more people have access to it, possibly. But how interactive is it? What would you take away from it?
Well, one thing I've noticed, especially with like a lot of it's kind of like with the Zoom situation. Like in our case, since we've known each other for such a long time, it's different because it's like we're family at this point. So I don't know if you've noticed this, where I'm kind of feeling this because I've done so many Zoom conferences and especially with the film festival, I feel like with these online type of dialogue, I feel like within that moment it gets intimate, but then when things are over, it's like it's disappears.
Definitely.
Where it's like the follow-up aspect, because there is, like with what you just said, if at any point there was never a face-to-face meeting, that personal interaction, I think there's a different kind of energy that you have when you have in a face-to-face interaction with someone,
right?
Where as opposed to just online, because I'm starting to feel like, because online can almost feel like you're watching entertainment. Like you're watching, you see what I'm saying? Like we watch so many things on TV, on our mobile phones, on the internet, where now you can almost file it in your head like, oh, this is just something that I watched.
Yeah, like a little bit of anonymity in online speaking. Even though you're seeing the person and you're hearing them and they're hearing you, once that call is over with that video chat, it's out of your memory. Whereas in person, there is no anonymity. You're there. You're present.
Yeah,
you met that person. That energy you feel from that person, and vice versa, that's burned into your memory. That lasts a lot longer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, it's exactly to your point where you think about, we've done, not to this extent, because since Zoom is not, it's only been taken off within the last year or so. We've done other types of, not just me and you, like I'm saying, like in general, everyone has done different types of video conferences and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually think in your head, do you remember those more, or the actual interactions you had with people?
Exactly.
Right? Like the actual time that you hung out with somebody or stuff like,
when there's a physical aspect to it as well, even a handshake, a hug, a high five, it's that greeting and that goodbye in person that means more. I can't recall a single video conference call that I've ever done with anybody in the whole world, but I could tell you certain times that I've met somebody or one of my friends, or a time that we've had, hanging out, like that is burned in your memory because there's more physical, your senses are used more, I believe, whereas online, there's a lot of your senses aren't used. It's just sight and sound.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's what really separates everything, where it's, if anything, it makes a lot more work on your end, where it doesn't just become an online hangout that you just happen to hang out, where now, what is the relationship after this? because, you know, immediately whenever people are doing these, you know, like just like the festival or doing a Zoom, people want to, you know, hey, let's give our contact information, whether it's LinkedIn or email address and stuff. But how many of those are actually followed up upon? Right. Like that's the thing where it's like, in the moment, everybody was engaged and interactive online, but then a week later, it's like we started from scratch.
Yeah, it was almost like a throwaway conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas in person, so like going back to Cannes, you've met multiple people there. You've networked with producers and actors there, and stayed in touch with them throughout the years. How different is it with the online experience then?
Well, the online experience, especially with the new people that you're meeting.
Are you in like a chat room? Sorry to cut you off, but how does it work? Like, are you in like just a party chat? Are you in a video conference? How does it work?
Well, there's different variations of it where there are a lot of Zoom situations in this aspect. Like Zoom kind of has been the predominantly way of a lot of people, like, you know, especially with the grid aspect in Zoom where they pick a certain, they would, you know, narrow it down to a certain number of people where it'd be like somewhere between 30 to 40 people for a specific time, you know, slot, whether it's 2 hours. And there's a lot of implementation where they'll do a situation where they're, okay, we're going to break you out. They're going to put you in breakout rooms where 4 people for 10 minutes. Give you a timing of 10 minutes so that once the 10 minutes they end, so now you're able to rotate and meet 4 new people. So in those speed 10 dating? Minutes, it is a speed. That's what it is.
So not only do you lose the aspect of there's no physical in-person energy there or any handshake or touch or anything like that, you lose all that aspect of this conversation or meeting a person, but you're also limited in time to 5 minutes. Now there's pressure on top of it.
Completely. And to add to what happens, this tends to happen so many times. You'll have, like, because you're rotating in different rooms, right? So if you have a format of how you want to do this, like, because every time you're going into a different room, you're starting all over again with all new people. So you basically have to introduce yourself all over. So picture you're reintroducing yourself within 2 hours, you know, 5 times as if you just started from scratch.
Oh, right. Dreadful. I would not want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you get to the point where you go into another room, you're like, I just felt like I literally just introduced myself. Like, I don't want to do the whole, go down to the list of who I am, where I am, what I'm
what you like.
all this. Yeah.
And that becomes less personable too, because you're just repeating it like it's a script.
Right. Absolutely. But the issue is you kind of have to do it because at the same point, you are in such a limited time that if you don't get these bullet points out, where there are many times we end up in different rooms where nobody even goes through that. We start talking about a specific topic and you get so wrapped up into it. And all of a sudden you get the counting clock that tells you, okay, you have 1 minute left. And everyone starts panicking at that point. You're like, oh, wait, we didn't exchange any information. We don't even know what we do.
Oh, by the way, my name is blah, 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 blah.
Right. And then all of a sudden it cuts off. So it's like,
oh,
yeah.
So you got to put another quarter in the machine for the sale to be over.
That's what it feels like. That's exactly what it feels like. You're right. You have to put a quarter machine.
Oh, horrible. Oh, that's dreadful.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully everything gets back to normal and you can go to Cannes again next year and dress up and meet people. Hopefully this next year I get to go with you, man.
Yeah. Well, before even next year, man. I mean, because that's all the way in May. I mean, because right now we have 2 of the situations that we're trying to accomplish as far as the film. Well, so there's 2 projects. One of them I got in involved in as a co-executive producer.
Okay.
I'm one of the co-executive producers, along with several other people, and Spike Lee is the biggest one for it. And it's a biographic film that's based on a true story on protests during the 1950s, 60s, dealing with like John Lewis, the past John Lewis, and Bob Zellner, who was Ku Klux. His family was in a Ku Klux Klan, but he actually went against his family and protested and marched in Alabama for civil rights. So it's a very big project.
Cool.
That is now starting to hit the festival circuit. It's a really good film. Lucas Till stars in it.
Lucas Till?
Lucas Till.
Okay. What's the film called?
It's called Son of the South.
Son of the South. Okay.
Son of the South. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So we've got that. So now that is just starting to make the festival round, and hopefully it'll get its chance to educate a lot of people, because I didn't even know this story existed before I got involved into the project. And it's a very powerful, interesting project and part of history. And our other feature film, the horror film. So we're hoping that will be released somewhere around December, January.
Okay.
So we're trying to make that happen. And
which horror film was it?
Black Pumpkin.
Was it Black Pumpkin? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you sent me a script for that one and read through that.
Yeah, we're sent all the distribution materials to our distributor for that in the finalization process. So it's just that. I mean, we always knew for that one that we were going to go with a streaming platform for that.
Right.
Because once again, like we talked about before, like theatrical is such.
Well, it's the way of the world. I mean,
it's
you got to find streaming distribution. October, is that like a goal, or December, January the goal?
Well, I mean, because we're really in September.
Who knows what's going to happen in October?
Right. So, it has to be at this point by late December, January. I mean, ideally, we would have wanted to release it for Halloween because it's a Halloween film, but right now it's looking more like late December, January to kind of release it. So that's what we're looking into with that aspect, and then to have the film festival at the end of January to happen with that. So that's what's on the schedule. On the actor aspect, like, because these were films that I worked more on the producing, co-executive producing side, like on the actor aspect, like there's a film called The Hyperions that I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but maybe sometime this year, in the next couple of months, but it's an anti-superhero film.
Oh, cool.
And so it's an interesting twist, and it looks like it could be a cult classic, just in the way of the type of imagined superhero films that people are so drawn to. But this is more dealing with a lot of human aspect, I want to say, because like in a lot of superhero films, like anything from like Superman to like Iron Man to you name it. Justice League. Like, even though we're looking at them like they look human, but for some reason their lives are a bit extraordinary as a human being. I mean, Iron Man he's like, his the amount of money and access to tech he has is like, even though we look at Elon Musk, like, how does this guy do it? Iron Man is like 10 times that, right? And Aquaman, I mean, come on. Like, if you can breathe underwater for that long, hey, so it's like, but this film, Hyperions, has, there are superpowers, but at the same time, there are a lot of like, real world situations that people are dealing with that it makes it a little bit more humanized too.
So I have to check out your film and see it because I definitely love that genre.
Yeah,
that twist, that aspect of it.
The main star of it is Carrie Ellis.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look it up.
Which is it's always a kick for me, like as far as when I came to America, because like learning English was, I learned English by watching TV and movies, and it always took me into this imaginary world of like these film and TV just look like such an amazing place for me to just escape and just dream in. And one film that was huge was Princess Bride. And Carrie Ellis was it, and to come full circle to be able, I never imagined to be able to work on a project that he starred in, like it's just, I guess that aspect of like,
what did we talk about earlier? Everything comes full circle.
Yeah. I think also the good thing about, especially with what we're all doing, you're a filmmaker, you're a businessman, and you're working on so many things. I think with anyone, I think the amazing thing about it is that we tend to surprise ourselves with what we're starting into, because the more and more we keep doing it, and we discover all these new possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
It's we had no idea that we were capable of doing this, and it's hard to even assess it because you're in it. But when someone else actually points out to you, like, wow, like I remember when you were just talking about this and where you're at right now. But your mind is like, well, like we said before, I'm still playing chess, buddy, and I've got 5 more moves I gotta make.
Yeah, the game's never over.
The game's never over.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining today, Jacques, and I'm definitely gonna check out that film. I appreciate you joining today, Jacques, and if you could give me a little, I don't know what to say. Like, how would you, if I said, all right, ciao or bye, see you later, chat later, what would you say in French? Like, how would you say goodbye in French? Like, what would be a good thing?
You just gave all the ones in Italian and Spanish. There was only one left, and you literally.
No, how would you say thanks for having me? Had a good time, or talk to you later, or, something like that. What would be a? How would you say?
I would say like merci pour le temps que j'ai avoir la chance de parler à ce moment-là avec toi, pour parler avec les films. Et je suis vraiment fier du temps que j'ai passé avec ça, pour parler avec toutes les personnes qui vont entendre ça. Et voilà, je veux dire merci, et j'espère que tout le monde va checker les projets que je fais et les projets que Grosvenor vont faire aussi. Il est un très bon intervieweur, et il a demandé des bonnes questions et tout ça. Donc, c'était très sympa.
Okay, now you're just showing off. All right, brother. I appreciate you, man.
All good things.
I'm sure it was. I don't know how I'm going to do the subtitles on that, but I appreciate you jumping out with me, bud. It was good catching up with you, man.
Awesome, absolutely.
All right, brother. I'll chat with you later, yeah?
All right, definitely.
All right, love you, bro.
All right, love you.
Yeah, peace.